It's Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
It's a very good evening, Zimbabwe. Welcome to the Thursday edition of ZiFM Sport. It's a shortened edition, and over the last 2 weeks, we've been looking at various World Cups. It's a 5-part series, so there's 3 to go. Today, we look at France 98. And let me tell you something, when FIFA allotted the rights to host to France, it was a tournament that was always going to have a bit of va-va-voom, a bit of oh la la, and a bit of je ne sais quoi. And let me tell you, this tournament had all of that, and I'm sure the ZiFM Sport team is going to be able to let us know exactly why. They are here. Mike Madoda, Chris Midzi, Alois Bunjira, our producer Sean Tafirenyika. My name is Barry Manandi. We're going to get straight into it, straight after a local sports news roundup.
The Home Front. Local sports news and analysis.
Our local sports news begins with what is a massive blow for the ladies' game. Zimbabwe Cricket and the Pakistan Cricket Board have mutually agreed to end Pakistan women's national cricket team's ongoing tour to Harare due to the latest travel policies of the visiting size carrier Emirates Airlines. Pakistan won the opening 50-over match on Tuesday of what was supposed to be a 2-week tour, with the tourists originally scheduled to depart next Sunday. However, following Emirates' announcements that it had suspended its flights on the Dubai route from the 13th to the 28th of February, both boards have decided to end the tour, with Pakistan now scheduled to leave Harare on Friday. In boxing news, Zimbabwean heavyweight boxer Elvis Moyo is expected to return to the ring after 2 years of inactivity after securing a fight against Romanian Bogdan Marius Dinu. In an interview from his Johannesburg base, Moyo said he will trade leather with Dinu, who's ranked 90th in the world rankings, next month in Tanzania. The Bulawayo bomber has been itching to get a fight to improve his rankings. And we wrap it up with news out of the Casulaga Premier Soccer League, the top tier of domestic football, whose chairperson Farai Jere says the elite clubs are ready for action and cannot afford to go another year without playing football. Farai Jere believes the football leaders have put in place satisfactory groundwork for the safe return of the game. Domestic football, which was classified amongst the high-risk sport codes under the country's lockdown rules, failed to take off last year because of the coronavirus pandemic. What are the plans, Chris? I mean, everywhere else in the world, we get to hear of these plans months before actually they're activated. But in Zimbabwe, it seems to be a big secret, so no one knows what they're actually planning in terms of the safe return of football.
It's a big secret, and unnecessarily so. And if it's a big secret, then one wonders if there actually are any plans. Because take, for example, Project Restart in the UK. We knew the plans, even when they were preliminary. We discussed them. We knew what was going on for 3 months until the actual restart happened. So it's a little bit worrying if people cannot cite any examples when talking about a plan to restart. What's the plan?
Hi, I'm Warriors coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
Z.
Petit. Zidane! Lift off for France! Djokovic. Zidane! Lightning has struck twice. 2 corners, 2 Zidane headers. Double trouble for Brazil. After years of waiting and wondering, now tears of pure joy.
France 1998. It's good for us to say Vive la France, because we say that, Mike, on the basis that always when a country hosts the World Cup for the first time, it's like a dive into the unknown, and you're not sure what you're going to get. But let me tell you, when France hosted their first World Cup, it was certainly something to behold. What were your memories of France 98?
Very good memories, Barry. It was a quality tournament. And why was it quality? Is because there were at least 6 or 7 sides that headed into the tournament with realistic prospects of winning the World Championship. They were the hosts, France, that boasted the talents of Zinedine Zidane. You had Argentina with the likes of Ariel Ortega and Gabriel Batistuta, Bati goals. You had, of course, England, the golden generation. And people talk about... the likes of Rio Ferdinand, Frank Lampard, etc. But if you take a look at England's 1998 team that had the likes of Tony Adams, Alan Shearer, David Batty, a young Michael Owen, David Beckham, Sol Campbell, that team actually was a lot better than the golden generation. And then you had the likes of Brazil, Cafu, Dunga, Ronaldo, the real Ronaldo. You had the Dutch with the De Boer twins, Frank and Ronald. They were quality sides, Barry. So going into the tournament, we didn't know which team would come out the other end as world champions. And indeed, the victory of France at the end of the tournament was something of a surprise, because as the tournament went on, it looked like Brazil were the ones that looked a shoo-in to actually go all the way.
And Brazil looked like they would defend their title, Chris, especially given that, in truth, as Mike is pointing out, there were lots of teams that had a realistic prospect of winning the tournament outright. But also, there was a healthy smattering of new teams, especially in an expanded competition, and perhaps a bit of bravery from FIFA to give the World Cup to a country that hadn't hosted before, and an expanded one for that.
Yeah, that's what makes this World Cup so special is the World Cup, it was the first time that they had 32 teams from the original 24, and giving such a big task to a country that hadn't previously hosted this tournament, it was a mean feat. They had 10 stadiums in 10 cities, generally the indomitable French spirit. It was one of the best tournaments just because of the sheer variety of the teams that were coming to it, and also just the size of the tournament itself. It truly it expanded in terms of it being a truly global competition.
And a global spectacle it was, Alois, because you look at, yes, Mike points out that there were lots of great players in possibly their peak form at this World Cup. But at their peak form, you need to then also deliver the results. And this tournament had those players delivering in copious amounts. It was very entertaining, lots of goals, lots of attacking football.
Yeah, I actually think that it was one of the most entertaining World Cups of our time, because there were a lot of goals, and like Mike pointed out, there were a lot of great players, your Cafus, your Zidanes, your real Ronaldos. It was before our Ronaldo was actually in full force, and there was a lot of entertaining football as well. The Netherlands, I thought also the Netherlands had their own golden generation at that time with Edgar Davids and all those players. It was quite a very entertaining tournament, and it was unpredictable as well. It was only towards the semi-finals, quarterfinals, that you could actually pick Brazil as the outstanding team. But before then, you wouldn't pick out who was going to win this tournament. And like Mike said as well, France ultimately came out as the winners, but nobody ever put their money on France to win that World Cup. Although they were the host, they never looked like they were going to win this final before the World Cup started.
Yeah, and testament to those goals that we spoke about, Alois. This tournament delivered 171 goals in the entire tournament, and it's the highest for a single tournament. It was only matched by Brazil in 2014. That's 2.7 goals per game, and that open, expansive football was as a direct result of the attacking talents on show. Mike, I know he talks about Alois talks about the Netherlands, and one of the players in the Netherlands setup, one of my favorites, played for Arsenal, but still one of my favorites, Dennis Bergkamp, certainly something to behold, and testament to the attacking football. 22 red cards in the tournament.
Yeah, defenders were under pressure, and so when defenders are under pressure, defenders are going to make mistakes. They're going to commit fouls, and some of those red cards were not like direct red cards in terms of straight red cards for foul or violent behavior. They were the defenders accruing 2 yellow cards over the course of a match because they were under pressure. They were making fouls. They were really good attacking players, very attacking players in that tournament. Let's not forget about Croatia with Davor Suke. who captured the imagination of the world with his goal scoring prowess, and of course that checked shirt, which has become quite popular now the world over. In fact, if you go on the Nike website, it's actually one of the best-selling shirts. The Croatia home strip. Whenever they release it, it's snapped up. It seems to be a collector's item. When you think of performances in 1998, Davor Suker's was certainly a collector's.
No, certainly one of a collector's item, and that checked shirt. And you look at the population of Croatia, Chris. You got to say to yourself, if it's one of the best sellers on the Nike website, it can't be because of the Croatian population alone. A lot of neutrals love this shirt as well. So that's an interesting stat there. Also interesting that Croatia themselves, this was the first tournament that they were attending. They were actually debuting at this tournament and finished third. So they performed admirably, and I suppose it was a benefit of the expanded tournament, and other countries also were able to make their debuts, not least of all Jamaica.
Yeah, Jamaica was also able to make their debut. They were actually drawn in the same group. So that was Jamaica, Japan, Argentina, and Croatia completing that group. And what you have is, for example, Jamaica coming into this tournament, there's constant in terms of memories. What people always remember is the Jamaican fans and just how exuberant and colorful the Jamaican fan base was. So you have this expanded tournament that allows these teams to come in and perform well, the same way Croatia did. A bit of a surprising tournament for them, seeing as it was their first time.
Indeed, debutants who go almost all the way are always exciting. Guys, we talked about the goals, and now I want to get a sense of your thinking of a particular experiment that was conducted by FIFA. I know they call it the Sepp Blatter experiment, but in truth, it was FIFA that voted this into force. And it's the golden goal. Alois, it has split opinion. Some people say that it should have been kept, or others say that, in fact, it's good riddance because it was a painful way to end tournaments. The golden goal, you get into extra time, whoever scores wins. Almost like a training ground exercise, isn't it?
To be honest, for me, I think it was good riddance. It was I didn't like it at all, because sometimes teams fluke it. I don't like fluking. You are just coming from a rest after 90 minutes, and you just get onto before you are warmed up for the match, boom, and they score the goal, and the match is over. I think it was also robbing the fans as well, because the fans want to enjoy. Give the fans their maximum. The teams have drawn. So let them play the whole 30 minutes so that we can. Now imagine you go in 2 seconds and the game is over and you're sitting there. I didn't like it at all. I also thought that it was not a very good way of ending a match. Give somebody a chance to fight back. So probably I'm happy that they voted it out and they scrapped it in the end.
I mean, it's the equivalent, Barry, in a fight of saying that the guy who strikes the first blow wins. I mean, it's not fair. For me, it was just a ridiculous concept, and I'm glad that the experiment was ended. But as an Italy fan, it's especially painful for me because just a couple of years down the road at the Euro Championships, you remember that Italy fell foul to the golden goal versus France. Final. It was a painful way to lose the final after David Trezeguet scored against the Azzurri. So I have no fond memories of the golden goal at all.
Absolutely. And also that win in the Euros, ensuring that the world champions were then European champions as well in France. And Les Bleus were certainly the purple patch for Les Bleus. And they themselves were the first beneficiaries in a World Cup tournament of the golden goal, of course, scored by Laurent Blanc. And it was the only one of the tournament in France 98. It was against Paraguay. Guys, we cannot do a review of a World Cup and not talk about the African prospects. And I think, Chris, at this World Cup, you have to say that Nigeria was carrying the flag on the basis of exactly what Mike mentioned at the top of this discussion when he talked about golden generations, talked about the English golden generation, we talked about the Netherlands, and Nigeria certainly had a golden generation at this tournament.
Definitely a golden generation, one that is probably etched in every African's mind. So they had retained most of their 94 team, but also that golden generation included Sunday Olise, Okocha, Kanu, Daniel Amokachi, and Celestine Babayaro as well. So those are players that we obviously know from this particular generation, and to have them all in one team, it resulted in some interesting football, some shocks as well, especially their group opening win over Spain, equalized twice, and then this absolute rocket of a goal right at the end to win the match as well. So we got great performances from this Nigeria team.
Alois, did they underachieve in your opinion? I mean, getting into the round of 16 in '94, some would say, yeah, unfortunate, but surely this was a team good enough to get as far as the quarterfinals, but never did. Did they underachieve in your view?
Yeah, I think they did. If you ask me, Bay, I think they did, because in 1994 they actually did very well. We thought that they had a very good team, and they flattered us. They could have gone further, if it wasn't for that Roberto Baggio moment, But I think it was it England or Spain or Italy that knocked them out in 1994. I'm not sure about that anymore, but they did so well.
It was Italy.
It was Italy, yes, the Baggio moment.
England didn't qualify for the '94 World Cup.
Yes, so that Baggio moment, it killed them. But then when you look at their 1996 exciting team at the Olympics, they won the Olympics 1996, and the bulk of those players, they are the ones that went on to play for Nigeria in the 1998 World Cup. So if they could win the 1996 Olympics with teams like Brazil, which had Ronaldo's and them, we all thought that if they could conquer at the Olympics, they could also go on and conquer at the World Cup. Something that put belief in us, but then apparently they got knocked out, and we didn't expect that, honestly. We call it a golden generation because it emerged from that 1996 triumph and got into the World Cup. And for us all, we had our hopes in Nigeria and saying that this is going to be the first African team to actually take us all the way to the quarterfinals. I actually think that they were disappointing in the end.
Yeah, disappointing in the end, and were knocked out in the round of 16 by a 4-1 scoreline against Denmark. A Denmark side that, again, Mike, was very impressive. But you gotta say, the most controversial, in inverted commas, game of the tournament has got to be England versus Argentina. Controversial not so far as there was a controversial decision, but it created a huge uproar as a result of the British press, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was the generation that they hoped would go on and win a World Cup. Remember, at the Euros in 1996, which they had hosted, they had got to the semi-finals, so were unlucky to lose in a penalty shootout, having dominated Germany in that semi-final, and then they lost the penalty shootout in that tournament. And so they felt that this generation of players would kick on and challenge for the World Cup. They came up against an Argentina side, a very good Argentina side, but the Argentinians, Barry, were very streetwise. The likes of Juan Sebastian Veron, Diego Simeone, Gabriel Batistuta, Ariel Ortega, Roberto Ayala. Those were very experienced streetwise players. They just didn't have a talent and ability. They also knew how to win, and to win dirty. So the longer this game went on and the harder it became, Argentina began to perhaps look for ways in which they could disadvantage England. And David Beckham was to be the player who fell for it. Up against Diego Simeone, they had a bit of a scrap. Diego Simeone was roughing him up all game, and then David Beckham, after a foul was committed on him, he lashed out, kicked out at Diego Simeone, who fell like a ton of bricks, and of course the red card was shown, and England was incandescent with rage. And of course I remember the one headline, which was 10 brave lions and one silly little boy. David Beckham's life after that World Cup was quite miserable, because he's the one who took the fall for England's demise at that World Cup. And we mustn't forget that they didn't lose that game in regulation time. They certainly were 10 brave lions, because they forced it all the way to a penalty shootout, in which I think it was David Batty and Gareth Southgate, or David Batty, I think, missed the crucial penalty, and that's how they were knocked out. And Southgate also missed. So it was unlucky for them, but the media never quite forgave David Beckham until, of course, he curled in that free kick versus Greece that took them to the Euros.
Absolutely. Another golden generation that underachieved. We've got to rush and go to the final now, Chris. And you got to say that just like the tournament, this final lived up to expectations even before a ball was kicked, because there was a lot of confusion around the Brazil lineup.
There was a lot of confusion around the Brazil lineup. In fact, we're still confused about what happened with the Brazil lineup. So when the team sheets came out, Brazil's had no Ronaldo. And how are we going to have a situation where Brazil is going into a final without Ronaldo? So they amended it, and then he was back on. So there's some speculation that it was, due to illness, sponsorship intervention, FIFA interference. Even a sex scandal has been popped in there as a possible option of exactly what was going on here. So it obviously then created a kind of undercurrent before the match even began.
Yeah, an undercurrent indeed, but you got to say that Zizou owned that final. I want to get the thoughts of the guys straight after we hear from the man himself. Here's Zizou, Zinedine Zidane, who spoke about how special it was for him to play against Brazil in the World Cup final.
Justement, en fait, et pas souvent, en fait. En même temps, quand on parle du Brésil...
Curiously, when I spoke about Brazil with some former players, Brazil is seen as a good nation of football, but not so much anymore. In my case, this team has always inspired me a lot. Against them, I managed to raise my level of play, and this is true for my former teammates as well. Each time we played against Brazil, we knew that we were capable of everything. We have never been the favorites, but in this kind of situation, you can play at your very best. And that is what happened for us.
Mike, you got to say this final, everyone thought to themselves, we've got the dream final we wanted. Zidane, one of the best players in the world, versus Ronaldo, arguably the best player in the world at the time. It was going to be epic. Unfortunately, Ronaldo, as Chris said, wasn't at peak performance, but Zizou then stepped up. And how?
Yeah, absolutely. And Zizou absolutely grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck. Brazil, they weren't entirely outplayed, even though they had Ronaldo, who could barely function. You could tell that the man was ill. He was not hundreds. And that just crippled them in a big way, because they lacked that potency. They lacked that magic, that explosive speed and the deadly finishing of Ronaldo, who was then the best player in the world. People, of course, will talk about Zinedine Zidane because he scored those 2 goals in the final. But people forget Ronaldo's exploits in the build-up, in the lead-up to the final. He was definitely the best player. And even for France, Zinedine Zidane wasn't the best player. I think Lilian Thuram in that tournament was their outstanding performer from right back. And who can forget the 2 goals scored by Thuram in that semi-final versus Croatia to get them into the final. But Zidane did what good players do best. When it's the biggest stage, the grandest stage, they put in big performances. We've seen it recently from Ronaldo, and he did exactly that. He scored the 2 goals that won France a World Cup on home soil. There was no denying the fact that he would then be crowned the best player in the world at the next ceremony.
Yeah, absolutely. Albeit at the tournament, Ronaldo was actually player of the tournament. He was voted the best Golden Boot winner. As you said, Michael Davosuke of Croatia with 6 goals. So what a tournament it was in France. Allez le bleu, as they say. And France certainly delivering the goods in their home tournament. Time is always the enemy. So we've got to take you around the world in 60.
How is it, guys? Elvis Tigula Pomba Moyo, WPF.
This is the bomb.
All Africa heavyweight champion 2-time. You are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Around the world in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We take off in Melbourne, where defending champion Sophia Kenin tumbled out of the Australian Open with a stunning second-round defeat to Kaya Kanepi, but world number 1 Ashley Barty made it safely through. The American claimed her maiden Grand Slam at last year's event, but any hopes of a repeat performance ended in the second round as she was well beaten 6-3, 6-2 by the Estonian. Kenin has been reduced to tears on court on several occasions since she came out of quarantine in Melbourne, and admitted she's been struggling to contain her nerves at the prospect of defending the title. We'll head over to London, where Marco Vunipola has declared himself fit and ready to go, with England's options at prop given a much-needed boost before Saturday's visit of Italy. Rehabilitation on an Achilles injury saw the 30-year-old miss last weekend's 11-6 defeat against Scotland in their Six Nations opener, and tight head Kyle Sinclair will also be back after he sat out the reverse due to suspension. We'll touch down in Liverpool, where Jose Mourinho admitted he was hurt by Tottenham's defending in the chaotic 5-4 defeat by Everton, and says Gareth Bale's latest injury issue is a surprise after the Welshman was left out of the squad completely. Everton reached the FA Cup quarterfinals for the first time since 2016 after a thrilling 5-4 extra time win over Tottenham at Goodison Park.
All right, we got to say goodbye. We got to say goodbye indeed with our play of the day. But if you're enjoying our coverage of the World Cups and indeed France 98 on YouTube, and you've got the data, you can actually watch those tournaments. The FIFA official films are all available for you. For now, we say goodbye with the sound of Carnaval de Paris. It's the official song of the 1998 FIFA World Cup. It's by Dario G. For now, may God richly bless you. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Manandi, out.